I first noticed the birds in my backyard in the summer of 2016, after nearly 10 months of a tumultuous recovery from a devastating episode of depression and anxiety that resulted in a 6-week medical leave and eventually led me to leaving my career of over 12 years. During that time, my first dog, Daisy, developed a cancerous mass in her lungs and had to be put to sleep. She was the first dog I ever loved, and goodness, did she love me back. I was spending a lot of time at home and a lot of time outside trying to get as much vitamin D as possible, having recently learned that low levels of vitamin D are correlated with depression and that my vitamin D levels were alarmingly low. Up until this point, I had had no interest in birds. I actually found them a bit disturbing. They creeped me out. But spending all this time outside in the spring and into the summer, I started noticing, really noticing, the songbirds that I had for neighbors. I first noticed the northern cardinal, such a regal bird, with its striking red plumage and that clever little tuft on its head. His mate, in beautiful brown, would also make an appearance. I loved their song. But there was another song that really captivated me, and I couldn't quite figure out who its chanteuse was. 2 notes, very distinct. It was coming from up in the trees, but the trees were so thick I couldn't see through their foliage. On a whim, I decided to get a bird feeder. I went to the hardware store, bought what I thought was the best deal for the price, got a sack of bird seed, and set it all up in my backyard. My first visitor was a house finch. I managed to snap a picture of it, July 3rd, 2016. And then another, and another. House finches are cute little birds, very social. They like to hang out in groups. They vary in color from reddish to purple to brownish gray, and they sing too. But theirs was not the song I was after. Birds have captivated imaginations from the beginning of time. Birds are ancient, the modern day descendants of dinosaurs, thankfully at a much smaller scale. Birds are mythical creatures that defy the laws of gravity and logic. Take chimney swifts, for instance. This little cigar-shaped bird can fly for 4 months while migrating without ever landing. They eat and sleep in flight. How had I not noticed? The more I learned about birds, the more I wanted to be outside, and the more I was outside, the better I felt about myself. Whether it was the sense of wonder these magical feathered creatures inspired, or the massive amounts of vitamin D I was getting, what is certain is the dark, heavy cloud over me was shrinking. Medication, family, and professional support didn't hurt either. And then I spotted it, tiptoeing carefully down the tree outside my dining room window. Looking in every direction before jumping onto the bird feeder, this tiny bird caught my eye like no other. Light yellowish brown body, white face, and a handsome little black cap. The black-capped chickadee. I went outside and it flew away, but I waited patiently. I wanted to see it again. Eventually it came back, grabbed one seed, and flew back up the tree. I saw it cache the seed, which is something they do. How they remember every single place they've stored seed is beyond me. And then I heard it. Those 2 notes. It was the black-capped chickadee. I had found it. I got a little carried away after that. I bought 3 or 7 other bird feeders, different kinds: sunflower, safflower, suet, thistle. This little hobby of mine, backyard bird watching, was giving me life. I loved the American goldfinches in their highlighter yellow plumage, so striking, and the dark-eyed juncos that looked like little pieces of modern art with the cool gray feathers and white bellies, the downy woodpeckers with their funny little red caps, and the operatic arias of the Carolina wren. Eventually, I had progressed so far on my journey through anxiety and depression that my therapist graduated me, and I began to rely less and less on medication. I had so many people to be grateful for throughout this dark year of the soul. Birds, though, played a significant part in this recovery. Birds got me to look outside of myself, to go out and get dirty, to learn something new. Birds got me to notice, to listen, to be fully present in the moment. Birds taught me to appreciate the impermanent nature of all things. One day I was sitting at my kitchen table when I saw a new bird perched at the feeder. It was striking, a little bigger than a cardinal. It had a red heart-shaped spot on its chest, and I knew what it was. I had seen it in my bird guide, and I wanted so badly to see one at my feeder. I stared at that rose-breasted grosbeak for a few seconds until it flew away. I like to think we made eye contact, but who knows? That bird, wearing its heart on its sleeve, became a symbol for me of the progress I'd made, of the road I had traveled, of the way my own heart had been outside my chest. And after it flew away, I never saw it again. I'm not the only one whose journey through depression and anxiety has been aided by the company of songbirds. You can read personal accounts of this all over the internet. There's science behind this if you need it too. Whether you're depressed or not, there may come a time in your life when you need to hang a bird feeder and turn your focus outwardly. There may come a time when you find you really need to listen, to get lost in the intoxicating melodies of your own feathered neighbors. You will learn that they don't need you nearly as much as you need them. After all, they do fine without your birdseed. But you will be changed by their beauty and their ephemerality. Emily Dickinson, one of my favorite poets, had a great love of birds. There are over 200 mentions of birds in her collected works. They inspired her. They gave her life. And, well, I'm not a poet, so I haven't written a poem of my own. But as I remember my rose-breasted grosbeak, a poem of Dickinson's comes to mind. Conferring with myself, my stranger disappeared, though first upon a berry fat miraculously fared. How paltry looked my cares, my practice how absurd, superfluous my whole career beside this traveling bird.